You're going to work for Chip Foose, for Christ's sake. That's a competition to paint the car, and you want to come back here. How about me going sleeping with another woman and going to go back with my wife?
Well,
it's the same thing. You're sorry? No, you're not sorry.
No, I'm not sorry.
Okay.
No.
The death of Boyd Coddington brought about two chilling discoveries. First, that his life was filled with so much hate and controversy. Second, that before he died, he kept evidence of these bitter battles hidden away in his garage. After nearly 2 decades, his family, who were finally healing from the loss, now have to confront his ugly past. Even they do not have all the answers, leaving them with haunting questions. How did a man worth $120 million end up buried in debt? And why did his garage hold the answers all along? Join us as we uncover the secrets Boyd Coddington's garage held about the dramatic rise and fall of his empire. The garage opens. On February 27, 2008, 63-year-old Boyd Coddington passed on after an unsuccessful surgery to fix a perforated colon. He had already spent years fighting diabetes, which made it nearly impossible for his body to bounce back, and after several operations, he stopped responding to treatment. The tragic news traveled fast. Millions of fans mourned the man who had spent decades turning classic hot rods into superb rolling works of art. Television networks rushed to replay old episodes of his hit Discovery Channel show, American Hot Rod, while rival car builders publicly praised him as a true visionary and rival. But as all this praise showered in from the outside, inside the famous California workshop he left behind, things were falling apart. Projects that the crew had spent months working on were suddenly abandoned right where they sat. Half-finished roadsters were left hanging on mechanical lifts, welding torches lay cold on the counters, and half-empty coffee cups still sat on the workbenches. The employees had slowly abandoned the shop, moving on to find other jobs. Even the TV production crew packed up their gear, and the once booming garage fell completely silent. For years, absolutely nothing inside that building moved. It was almost like a graveyard. Until, after almost 2 decades, as the family began sorting through Boyd's estate to find what was left behind. As they began opening the old cabinets, desk drawers, filing boxes, and storage rooms that had been locked since Boyd's death, they anticipated finding the usual: spare parts, engine blocks, and tools. Instead, they uncovered a hidden story about their late father. Every single item they pulled out answered one old rumor or created another. The paperwork showed a business empire that was drowning. The private letters exposed deep, bitter arguments between friends and family members that had been hidden from the reality TV cameras. And the financial books pointed to a huge mountain of debt hidden beneath Boyd's public image of wealth and success. Even the half-built cars left on the floor showed a man racing against the clock, wrongly convinced he would only always have just enough time to beat the next deadline. As they searched, they came across the first secret hidden in the garage. And this first secret had absolutely nothing to do with cars. They were about the people he trusted most. What the unit revealed about his personal relationships. One drawer held old design sketches and photos from the late 1980s, back when a young designer named Chip Foose was still trying to complete a design internship at the shop. Long before either man became reality TV royalty, they had a strong mentor and protege bond. Boyd gave Foose the opportunity to design some of the most ambitious custom cars of that era, and Foose took it well. For years, they looked completely inseparable. Together, they built award-winning hot rods that transformed the entire industry. But the paperwork stored next to those old photos hinted that their partnership was never as easy as it looked on camera. Among the folders were bankruptcy documents from the collapse of Boyd's Wheel Company in 1998. It was a massive financial disaster that forced the shop to downsize and pushed several top employees to look for work elsewhere, including Foos. His departure became one of the biggest negative turning points in Boyd's career. The loss of an important asset was one thing, and the rumors that followed were another. It became hard to separate the lies from the truth. There was a lot of speculation on how they ended. Some thought the separation came about because of massive creative arguments, fights over who deserved credit for the shop's designs, or even a struggle for recognition. These rumors only got worse after Foos launched his own company and became the star of the rival TV show Overhaulin'. Fans treated the two builders like bitter, sworn enemies, and the reality TV producers loved this, pushing the narrative heavily. Yet, inside Boyd's personal records were photos of their early projects and letters from a time when the two still spoke as friends and partners. After Boyd passed away, Foos chose to honor him, rejecting the rumors of their hatred. He explained that Boyd gave him the opportunities that launched his career and that he will never forget his generosity. As the family dug through the files, Boyd's son, Chris Coddington, came across a collection of documents related to him and his late father. According to the other family members who were in the storage vault, he looked shocked. He didn't believe his father, who was known to be rigid, kept something for him in his private garage. He felt like he had finally been acknowledged for all he went through in his late father's name. Chris Coddington had spent his life around the garage, and after his father died, he worked tirelessly trying to preserve his legacy by creating Boyd Coddington wheels. But it wasn't as easy as it seemed. He had tried to revamp his father's business, but it was almost impossible. Nothing was working out. Instead of inheriting a smooth, thriving company, Chris found himself in a mix of troubles. Even having to constantly defend his father's name from disputes and using meager profits to clear huge debts from unfinished projects long after the funeral. Messy employee records were scattered throughout the main office. Personnel files and resignation letters showed how much Boyd struggled to keep his talented workers. Highly respected fabricators, designers, and mechanics repeatedly walked out the door. Some left for better pay elsewhere, while others openly admitted in their letters that the pressure of the shop had simply become too much to handle. The departures all but confirmed one thing: Boyd had a talent for attracting gifted people, but keeping them around was a completely different story. Even his wife once felt the same way. Among the personal items found in the garage were photographs of Boyd and his wife Judy. From their early years at the shop to the height of his fame, Judy had been beside him through it all. But Boyd reportedly had little patience for her. Instead, he loved focusing entirely on the cars. This made it difficult for Judy, and at times she would crash out, feeling fed up. Former employees who spent time around both of them described their relationship as rocky at times. Boyd had a tendency to compile pressure until he found an outlet, and the people closest to him were most often on the receiving end of that. Despite everything, Judy remained with him until the very end. Even when he passed in 2008, she was at his side. As his family worked their way even deeper through the shop, they noticed another pattern. They found messy complaints and folders, documents that suggested Boyd's greatest battles weren't against rival car builders like Roy Brizio or John Butera. His greatest battles were fought against himself, inside his own business. The work ethic that built and destroyed Boyd. This pattern was impossible to ignore. There were numerous complaints about Boyd's work method, and because of this, the shop was constantly racing against deadlines that seemed almost impossible to meet. One build would barely leave the workshop before another customer was promised an even tighter delivery date. Cars that normally required months of fabrication were expected to be completed in weeks. Notes written across several work orders read, "No delays," "Customer waiting," and "Must be finished before show." Seeing this, it wasn't difficult to understand why so many former employees described the shop as an uncomfortable place operating under mountains of pressure. Former fabricators repeatedly described Boyd as someone who refused to accept good enough. If a body line looked even slightly uneven, it came apart again. If the paint wasn't exactly how he envisioned it, if it was missing even a bit of color, entire panels were repainted. Hundreds of hours of work could disappear with a single decision. Even the viewers knew this. On television, he would often reject completed work without hesitation, no matter how much work had been put into it. He would do this without enforcing a new guideline, causing extra amounts of pressure on his workers, running around trying to meet a standard, not knowing what exactly the standard was. It produced extraordinary cars, but it also produced exhausted craftsmen. But Boyd didn't care. For all he knew, he was paying them to do so, and he took steps to make sure they always met this standard. Dwayne Mayer was the primary foreman Boyd hired to manage the daily operations of the workshop. Serving as the direct bridge between Boyd's design vision and the fabrication crew, he abused his position. Even the fans hated Dwayne because he abused his power with constant screaming, toxic bullying, and ruthless, unfair treatment of talented fabricators. But Boyd didn't seem to have a problem with it. In his opinion, the foreman was doing his job perfectly. Because of Dwayne Mayer, the environment suffered. Staff turnover became one of the show's defining traits, with talented builders leaving almost as quickly as they arrived. Boyd's own son struggled to remain in that environment, and even respected craftsmen like Charlie Hutton eventually walked away to build careers elsewhere. As a result, the same standards that made Boyd Coddington the name he was also made his business incredibly difficult to sustain. Every delay increased labor costs. Every redesign consumed more materials. Every missed deadline frustrated another customer. And every resignation letter just put extra pressure on the staff who still remained. His need for perfection was so expensive that it was also becoming unsustainable. And with time, this habit returned to bite him in the back. A self-manufactured financial crisis. If the employee files explained why so many talented people walked away from hot rods by Boyd, the financial records explained why the company itself was slowly falling apart. Inside several filing cabinets were stacks of invoices, bank correspondence, supplier statements, loan documents, and tax records dating back years, explaining what Boyd's own actions cost him. The earliest records showed his extraordinary success. Throughout the late 1980s and early 1990s, Boyd's business expanded quickly. His billet aluminum wheels became some of the most recognizable products in the industry. Demand for his custom builds stretched months into the future, and the company eventually grew into a publicly traded business. At its peak, Coddington's companies were valued at well over $100 million, while Boyd's wheels generated tens of millions of dollars in annual sales. But soon into that success, costs of operation started increasing far faster than sales. Purchase orders for raw materials continued arriving even as market demand slowed. And it wasn't a coincidence. It was the owner's decision to try fighting the market. Instead of scaling back on expenses, Boyd decided to keep spending money on parts. And soon enough, he found his business in trouble. Boyd's wheels collapsed in 1998 after so many losses made it impossible for the company to continue operating. The same empire that had once appeared untouchable suddenly found itself buried under debt. Boyd would later admit the experience left him feeling crushed like an ant. To keep his shop from sinking completely, he was forced to sell personal assets, including real estate and even his prized Ferrari. just to finance another attempt at rebuilding his business. But his aggressive and desperate approach to business didn't allow this rebuild to take root properly. In 2005, investigators accused Boyd of registering newly constructed vehicles as antique automobiles. By using the identities of older cars, the builds could avoid California's strict registration rules. With no evidence to defend himself, Boyd pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor, paid thousands of dollars he didn't have in fines, and completed community service. The case became both an embarrassing and expensive reminder that even industry icons weren't above the law. Fans picked it up, accusing him of trying fraud out of the desperation of being broke. These weren't the only ones. As his family continued digging through, they found others that threatened his very reputation and legacy. Controversies hidden in a storage vault. The deeper his family searched through Boyd's vault, the clearer it became that unfinished cars weren't the only things he left behind. Even after his death, the fierce debates surrounding his life never truly disappeared. If anything, they only grew in size. Even after he died, his name was still being exploited. One situation occurred when Dave Kindig of Bitchin' Rides sold a 1929 Ford Roadster at the 2016 Barrett-Jackson auction, advertising it as an original Boyd Coddington build. However, Boyd's son, Chris Coddington, quickly came online to publicly dismiss this claim, revealing that although the body and chassis were from Boyd, the actual assembly was done by Covington Customs. He said Kindig was aware of this weeks before the sale, but still chose to spread misinformation. After this statement, the situation died down. But as Chip Foose's reputation grew elsewhere, so did the massive debate over who deserved the credit for the shop's most iconic hot rods. Many enthusiasts believed he was the true creative mastermind behind several award-winning builds, but rarely received public credit because of Boyd. Others argued that while Chip was undeniably talented, Boyd was the one who built the environment, hired the team, and funded the projects that made those designs possible. Even today, car fans still argue over where Boyd's vision ended and where Foose's began. And when fans weren't the ones initiating fights, Boyd was the culprit. Old letters revealed ownership disputes over designs after employees left his company. He believed former staff members ran away and built highly successful careers by stealing ideas originally developed inside his shop. He insisted those builders took the skills he taught them and evolved them into their own. Despite how controversial the claim was, none of his former staff ever came to deny or accept them. They simply left him to his own vices. The drama wasn't just limited to arguments on intellectual property. Fans also began to see Boyd as a dictator and authoritarian. They referenced what former employees said about what life inside the famous workshop was like. These employees spoke of Boyd's attitude towards work. They said while American Hot Rod portrayed Boyd as just a wildly explosive perfectionist, he was also deeply controlling, saying he wanted to impose authority everywhere he went, making others uncomfortable day in and day out. But years later, several people who worked alongside Boyd claimed the series heavily exaggerated those conflicts for cheap entertainment, and that while Boyd liked being involved often, the editors exaggerated the arguments. Even former designer Tom Taylor famously argued, stating that the chaotic version of the shop seen on television wasn't the place he remembered. Still, the public had already formed its opinions. To some, Boyd was an uncompromising genius whose high standards elevated everyone around him. To others, he was a stubborn boss who stole from his apprentices and whose harsh attitude drove away his best talent and created completely unnecessary conflict. By the time the final cabinet was emptied, one thing was incredibly obvious. The papers inside Boyd's garage hadn't settled any of the debates surrounding his life. They simply explained why many of them still exist today. And like these unfinished arcs, a couple of unfinished projects were also in there, sitting as evidence of a creative whose time was cut short unexpectedly. The final unmasking. At this point, the garage no longer felt like a workshop. It felt like some sort of automobile museum filled with history. Scattered across the floor were dusty projects exactly where Boyd had left them. Some sat on chassis stands without engines, while others had beautifully shaped bodies but no interiors. Shelves were piled with paid purchase orders, custom-machined billet parts, and hand-marked blueprints. All projects with deadlines the creator failed to meet before his life suddenly ended in February 2008. These cars would never get their own dramatic on-screen reveal, and no crowds would ever gather around them. Yet, these unfinished projects also provided the most honest portrait of Boyd Coddington. Despite the heavy bankruptcy, the public criticism, the legal battles, and the relentless pressure, he never stopped imagining what came next. Every blueprint represented another dream he intended to build. The workshop was abandoned because Boyd ran out of time, and not because he had run out of ideas. He wasn't one to abandon work because of a creative block. Ultimately, Boyd's massive legacy stretched its hands into so many different areas, far beyond the walls of his California garage, into some of the absolute biggest names in the custom car world, including Chip Foose, Jesse James, and Tom Taylor, who all spent a massive chunk of their careers learning from him. Many went on to build legendary businesses of their own, taking pieces of Boyd's signature style with them. And today, iconic cars like Cadzilla and Chazoom remain the golden standards against which all modern custom builds are measured. In the end, Boyd Coddington's legacy is impossible to summarize in a single sentence. To some, he was an uncompromising visionary who turned hot rods into rolling works of art. To others, he was a stubborn craftsman whose relentless standards and demanding personality came at a devastating personal and professional cost. Perhaps both versions are entirely true, and maybe that is exactly why he went on to achieve what he did. What do you think was Boyd's biggest mistake? His inability to properly maintain relationships, or his perfectionism? Do you think he could have handled his business better? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.